Well, morning, everyone. One of the real joys about talking at conferences like this, especially those that are focused on European technology, is what a transformation there has been. When I started out, it was relatively rare for people to leave a relatively safe job in a normal career and do a startup. We then went through the period of the dot-com boom and bust, where suddenly lots of people doing startups, and then it all disappeared. And now, what we have is a very different situation. We have an incredibly vibrant community of companies in the technology field across Europe. I think it's fair to say that the UK is probably leading that in Europe. You know, we do have the traditional fundamental technology clusters like Cambridge, and then we have what I would call the more creative technology cluster of Tech City. And then as you go through Europe, you see Munich and Berlin and Scandinavia, and starting to see, even in some of the countries that have a little bit less advanced in that technology transfer, the technology is coming out of things like their universities to create businesses. So it's a great position to be in when you've spent a lot of your time, like I have, in trying to get this ball rolling. And you just heard about a lot of the aspects that the government's been trying to do in order to encourage this sector. And the great news about that is that they are listening. So one of the very important things for all of you in the room is that what you have to do is fairly and honestly actually articulate what you need. You know, if you just continually say it's all about more funding, well, yeah, everyone wants more funding. But if you can give real feedback, then I think the government will listen and make changes. And we've seen all sorts of interesting things, from procurement changes, where, from my experience in the US, I know the importance of government procurement in getting those early reference customers to use small companies, to things like how the economy is structured in terms of skills, the kind of skills that we need in order to drive our businesses. So if that problem is nicely on the way, what are we looking at now? Well, now we have a great high-class problem, which is how do we turn these amazing European technology businesses that are small into the world leaders? And if I was giving a talk like this in the past, one of the things I'd have to deal with was to actually convince people you could do it, that it was possible to do it out of Europe, that you could create world-class companies from a startup out of Europe. That is done. There are more ARM processors in the world now than there are people. It is strategic technology across a whole series of sectors. My background, autonomy. You know, one of the most advanced software companies in the area of machine learning, big data, unstructured information. The next generation came out of Europe. And we're seeing these businesses at all levels, whether it be e-commerce or it be on the creative side. So it can be done. So the question is, what do we need to do now to allow your businesses to actually get from where they are now to being these world giants? Some of the things that we might want to talk about may not be entirely palatable. I think there is a question sometimes in Europe about ambition. Peter Field came through London not that long ago and said some pretty disparaging things about you lot. Comments about ambition, and I think even work ethic. Those are fundamentally wrong. We know they're wrong in this room. And we can trade barbs over conference speeches, but the way we prove it's wrong is by doing things. And what we need now is to make sure that we realize that it's not the lack of ambition that we have in this room. It's in the past we've seen problems. Those problems can now be overcome. So businesses should be starting to really think about not selling out too early in Europe, but actually going further. We've had some amazing pieces of technology in Europe. I think of Solexa, pretty much the leader in DNA sequencing. Now, that was bought by a large American company, and you could argue that it built that company. We saw another example in Blue Gnome being sold. What do we do to make sure that we have everything in place that we need so that those companies can move forward? Now, sometimes people turn around and they blame the VCs. It's very easy to say things like VCs are short-sighted and they don't have enough ambition, they don't have enough horizon. Look, actually, most VCs are pretty rational people. So we have to ask, why have they been selling early? And one of the things that we have to make sure we do is make sure that the alternative, which is for them to hold or perhaps to float the business at a different time, becomes viable. So, for example, if I'm a VC and I get an offer for 100 million for my great company, do I sell? Or, at the moment, I might have to keep in that business and grow it until it became big enough to go to NASDAQ, 600 million. And I look at the risk return and I make a decision. Well, if we can make the European capital markets work better for these kind of businesses, then the rational decision is to stay in and fund these businesses and grow them to larger sizes. Also, we need to look at the ecosystem in Europe so that non-public market money can be used to take companies to very large levels. There are different ways of doing this, and one of the things I've learned is Europe has advantages and weaknesses, and we must play to those advantages and weaknesses. So if we look at some of the next problems, people in the room, some of you that are traditional VCs, start thinking about a new European model, one where the line between VC and PE becomes a lot more blurred, because that can give us a great advantage here. We can do things differently. Another area that I think about in Europe is skills, but also experience. In Europe, we have amazing skill base. So, for example, the science base in certainly the UK is phenomenal. If you want really good programmers, you can get ones just as good here as you can in Silicon Valley. But there are other areas of expertise because we haven't got a history of growing these large tech businesses in the way that they have, for example, in the Valley. And it's things like marketing. It's things like knowing how to productize a product. And so it's very important in Europe that we share that know-how and that we leverage it, so that as we're generating people in these great businesses like an Arm, those people are being leveraged in startups, helping them with the actual ability to do things like marketing. So the important thing about being in Europe is you can't be a throw-the-cash-over-the-wall investor. We have to work together to share the know-how. And pretty soon we'll get to that situation where, yes, you can hit the Rolodex and you can find a marketing director just like you can in the Valley. So what's the big advantage of being in Europe? The thing I love about being in Europe is the people. You can get people who are just as good as those in Silicon Valley. They're just as ambitious, and they're incredibly loyal. The big problem you have in other parts of the world is holding on to those people. Here, if you give people a vision, they will follow you, and they will create amazing new things that are going to change the world. And at Invoke, we've raised $1 billion because we believe that people like you in this room have very special ideas. You have access to fundamental technologies, and we can add some of the things that need to be added in the ingredients. And then I look at the backdrop, all the things that are happening, incredible processing power in the cloud or in devices, connectivity, machine learning, enabling whole new applications that weren't there, Internet of Things, genetic sequencing, personalized medicine, the list goes on and on. This is a time of absolute phenomenal opportunity. And because these opportunities are about know-how, we are really good at know-how in Europe. It is our time to be doing things. The reason why Arm is processing information and powering the world is a know-how-based business. Sometimes there are phases where size of market matters. Sometimes there are businesses and phases for investment where know-how matters. We are now in a know-how phase, and that is an amazing opportunity for Europe. So enjoy the day, network, exchange experience, exchange knowledge, exchange funding, but also exchange ambition. It's no longer a case of doing a great startup and getting your next round. I want you lot to be world class. Let's show Peter Thiel why he's wrong. Thanks very much.